Hey there guys, I am the Six Machine and welcome back to another Warhammer video. Just wanted to do a quick one today going over some of the changes we saw in the very recent chapter approved, and whilst there was nothing exactly mind-blowing or anything in my opinion that's going to shift the meta up, I thought we would just go through them and have a look at what may be slightly cheaper or slightly more expensive in your lists going forward. So first up, and honestly probably the biggest change, is that the Chief Apothecary upgrade has now gone from an absolute steal at 15 points to pretty much still an absolute steal at 35 points. It is a pretty big bump at a 20-point increase for sure, over doubling from its previous cost, but to be honest, for the sheer utility and bonuses that you get from taking that upgrade, I would still say that it's worth it every single time you bring an Apothecary. You can still pretty much pay for the entire cost of the Apothecary and this upgrade over the course of a couple of turns just in the healing and bringing back a couple of models. So yes, it's a tiny bit more prohibitive, but honestly, I think no one will bat an eyelid at paying 35 points for the insane benefits that upgrading to a Chief Apothecary brings to your force. Inceptors have dropped by 5 points, going down to a mere 40 points a model, but to counter that, the Plasma Exterminator weapon is now a 10-point upgrade instead of 5, meaning that a Vulture Inceptor has now dropped 5 points overall, whilst the Plasma variant is now a much heftier investment coming in at 60 points. It does make the Vulture option a lot more viable in my opinion, and to be honest, I always thought they were a bit of a sleeper hit which was just massively overshadowed by the Plasma. So whilst I would say yes, Plasma is still probably a better option to take even at 60 points, if you do need some fast moving, mobile, anti-infantry shots in your list, then the Vulture Inceptors are now 5 for 200 points, which gets you a really good amount of DACA for a very reasonable price. All of the Stormspeeder variants got a very welcome and much needed drop of 15 points, going to a much more palatable 135, 155 and 160 points respectively for the Hail, Hammer and Thunderstrike. Is it enough to make them worthwhile? I do think they are definitely getting there, and certainly the Thunderstrike with its 2-up ballistic skill is a reasonably valid choice now. And even as a Dark Angels player, although I still think that the Vengeance is better overall due to its non-degrading profile, for other chapters you can now get some very fast moving, heavy fire support for a pretty decent points cost. Next up, in a very welcome turn, the Eliminators also got a decent points decrease, going down 5 points each, putting the squad at a very nice cozy 75 points. And then they got a further 5-point drop on the Las Fusils, meaning that your old Las Fusil squad at 120 points is now just 90, and brings some fairly decent anti-tank and anti-elite infantry firepower to your list. I would still, to be honest, probably just bring the sniper versions if I was going to take them, but at under 100 points now, if you need to fill a last spot and want some more strength 8 shooting in your list, these will now slot in very nicely. Much like the Stormspeeders, all of the Gladiator variants also got a very welcome decrease, this time to the tune of 20 points being removed from their cost, putting them down to 180 for the Lancer, 210 for the Reaper, and 230 for the Valiant. I'll be honest, it's nice, and again, like the Stormspeeders, may just tip them into the worth taking territory. I think especially for the Reaper and the Valiant, this does put them in the category where you would genuinely consider bringing them along. The poor Lancer, even at 180 points, is still pretty much just a load of rubbish though, in my opinion, and I think even at 160 or 170 points, I would still just think, you know what, I'll pay that little bit more and get the Valiant for my anti-tank shooting. But still, for those of you that like the Reaper and the Valiant, they are definitely a lot more usable now. As we saw in the Warhammer community article, Land Raiders of all variants also got a 20-point decrease, and unfortunately, as many people said, it still doesn't make them good. The problem with Land Raiders isn't really their cost, it's that they just lack a purpose. they need some kind of assault benefit rule to help the melee squads that you put inside them reach combat. Otherwise, they are just big, expensive bricks with a little firepower chucked on. And honestly, I don't think that even a 50-point drop would make me think they're worth bringing in lists at the moment, unless their rules change up to make them actually fill some kind of role. Repulsors, both the regular one and the Executioner, also got a 20-point drop, like the Gladiators, making them again just a little bit more worthwhile considering, but like the Land Raiders, I do think that overall they're just a bit too pricey for what they bring to the table, and how quickly they can be shot off of it. At 345 points for an Executioner with the Heavy Laser Destroyer, I'll be honest, I'd rather just take the Valiant and have 115 points left over for, you know, almost an entire Las Fusel Eliminator squad, or a Chaplain or a Bike, or a good chunk of a Hammer Strike Storm Speeder. It's just very much a case of too many eggs in one basket for my tastes when it comes to things like the Repulsors. Attack Bikes also got an increase, which I'm sure surprises absolutely no one. They got a bump up by 5 points to 50 points a model, so the multi-motor variant, which everyone and their mothers was bringing, is now 60 points rather than 55. I'll be honest, again, I still think this is really worth it, and although it now gives it a tiny bit more competition from the Invader ATV, you are still getting more bang for your buck overall if you want as many melters in your list as possible by going the attack bite route. But still, it does make things like Eradicators, ATVs and regular land speeders something more of an option to consider, which again is at least a step in the right direction. Finally, the Stormraven also got a drop, going from a ridiculous 310 points down to 290, which, I mean, it's a drop, I guess. I still think that's massively overpriced for a Toughness 7 14 wound model, even with Fly and its massive amounts of firepower. Once again, like Repulsors, it's just way too many points invested in one model, and I would say you are almost always better off splitting those points into 2 or maybe even 3 other units. So there we go. I haven't gone into the chapter specific changes at all, but I think this is all for the regular Space Marines in this chapter approved. I will say I'm a bit disappointed overall in this book. It doesn't seem to have done much to change things up in terms of bringing weaker units into usefulness or nerfing the ones that were really oppressive. You will still have no issue bringing your Chief Apothecaries or Attack Bikes or Plasma Inceptors, and you will still have to really and ah about whether you want to bring a Gladiator or a Storm Speeder to your list. Which is a shame, because they're both lovely models and I would love to see more of them on the tabletop. But there we go. Hopefully as we go on, more points adjustments and rules changes in the future will help to balance out the issues and bring more and more codexes into a better level of both internal and external balance. But what did you make of the Space Marine changes? And also, what changes are you happy to see or annoyed about seeing in your own armies in this chapter approved? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me, but until next time, I will catch you later, guys.